So if you're serious about building long-term wealth, these are 8 financial rules that to me are non-negotiable, and they are part of your roadmap to financial freedom and security. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to break down the key financial principles that everyone should know and implement as soon as you possibly can. And from mastering the big 3 expenses like housing, food, and transportation, to understanding the power of compound interest with the rule of 72, and how you can safely withdraw your funds without depleting your nest egg using the 4% rule. So let's take a look, and these are so important, you need to watch. So if you're enjoying the content we're putting out there each and every week, please subscribe to the channel, share this information with your friends. It's very important so that you can learn to build your long-term wealth. All right, first things first, let's tackle the big 3 expenses. And this is where, to me, many people screw up their budgets and screw up their finances because it's really easy, because these are the most expensive things that most people deal with. We're going to talk about housing third, but let's talk about transportation first. And I know everybody always wants to drive a nice car or have a nice truck or have a vehicle that is reliable for themselves. But many times people buy something and get a car payment that is so astronomically big at an interest rate that is so astronomically high. If you buy a brand new vehicle, those first couple of years, the depreciation and the value of that car is so dramatic that, to me, I don't care how much money I ever had, it has been a really long time since I ever bought a brand new car. I tend to try to buy 3-4-year-old cars. If you're the kind of person that buys a car and keeps them for 15 years, you can do it. You just need to make sure you can afford it. And in my opinion, the best way to be able to buy a vehicle is to be able to pay it cash for it. I think the last time we bought a vehicle with a loan, I think I had a car payment for about a year. We tried to pay it off as fast as we could. So just be careful with that one. It's one of those where everyone wants new, reliable, safe, all that good stuff. And I get it, but just don't let that screw up being able to do a bunch of other things. The second one is food. And food's kind of a touchy subject because it is really easy to want to eat out all the time, to DoorDash food all the time. Had a huge conversation with my son and his friends about this one because when my son started not DoorDashing and started making food at home, it was like a triple whammy. He was saving money, he was eating healthier, and if he wanted to go get food, the rule was no more DoorDash. You got to get your ass up off the couch and go get it. And because of doing that, it was one, healthier, money savings. It was like win-win all the way around. And the third of the 3 big expenses is housing. And as you guys all know, I'm a real estate agent. Again, I'm not going to harp on you about whether you should rent or buy. There's a process to all of these things, but you just have to be very careful that many people go and they buy a house, honestly, too young, too soon. And then not only are they thinking about just the house payment, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance part, they're not thinking about the maintenance, the repairs, how property taxes could go up. There's just a lot of other costs involved with owning a home that I think a lot of people don't get coached up on and they're not aware of. So sometimes, especially in the short term, renting is not necessarily a bad thing, but overall, in the long haul, in the long game, real estate is one of the best ways to build up your net worth. It is how many human beings became very wealthy. There are seasons of renting, but long term, you've got to get a plan in place to be able to own and buy a house. These are the 3 things that really kind of screw people's budgets up the most. So you just got to be cautious and careful. And if you're not sure how they work, just reach out. We're happy to answer questions about them. So rule number 2, pay yourself first. And you guys know I'm a big proponent of the 50-30-20 rule, but for many people, 20% is a lot for them to be able to do. And so in this video and some other videos I've talked about maybe doing 15 or 10% off the top and then trying to get that last 5 or 10% at the back end. But in a perfect world, you would pay yourself first. So I always like to use that $100,000 income limit because it just makes the percentages work really well. And if you're able to do the 10 or 20% right off the top, then you pay yourself first. So you make that 100, that money gets pushed 20% or 15% every single paycheck into your savings and investments accounts, and it's automated. So you're not having to think about it. And then you live off the rest. So for people that hate budgets, so a really good rule I always tell people is $100,000, take that investment off the top, and then whatever you have left over, in a perfect world, it'd be $80,000. Live on that and not 1 cent more. So then your investment happens first and all that other stuff happens second. And you want to automate it. It's rule number 3 is automating all of this. Now, there are pros and cons to automating. And one day I'm going to do a video about this because I think for younger people in today's world, automation has been a blessing and it's been a curse. Because here's what happens is when everything is automated, you never feel the pain of actually spending your money. You never dig in your wallet for cash. You never pay a bill by writing a check, old school wise. I can't even tell you how many people I know in their 20s have literally never written a check before in their life. And I think if you're someone whose financial situation might be pretty messy, I would really love for people, I know it's not really overly realistic, but I'd really love for people to spend a month or 2 or 3 literally doing their budget on a pad of paper and paying for everything by writing checks and paying cash. Now, I know that's not realistic because many places won't even accept cash anymore. Automation eventually is where we want all of these things to be. So paying your bills, doing your investments, and that's the long-term goal. But in the short term, sometimes unautomating everything and making it a little more painful when you spend that money is a much, much better way to go. So rule number 4 is the 3 principle rule. It's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, we're all trying to figure out ways to increase our earning, decrease our spending, and then everything that's left over is investing. And I hate using the term everything left over because ideally, I want you pulling money off the top and then living off the rest. But again, if right now 20% investing is too much because we have debt repayments, other things we're trying to do first, then great. Let's do 5 or 10% off the top. Let's try to make more and spend less. And then if there is money left over, then we can also invest that, save that, build up some room for us so that if we do have an unexpected emergency or something comes up where we need to spend money, it won't be so devastating to our overall financial picture. So just know, increase earning, decrease spending, and keep whatever's left over. And again, that goes back to the dreaded budget word that we all hate so much. So if you're someone who's looking to start doing a better job of building your wealth and finances, click the link in the description below. It'll give you an example Excel spreadsheet on how to best manage and fill in your numbers for your budget. So take a look at that. If you have questions, just reach out to us. Rule number 5 is what's known as the rule of 72. And really what this is, it helps people understand how long it takes their investments to double. So if you had money in a high yield savings account and you were in there at 4 or 5%, you just take 72 divided by 5, and it tells you how many years it will take to double. Let's say, for example, long-term, the stock market on average has earned a 10% return. So 72 divided by 10 is 7.2 years. So you would know, like if I'm investing this money as you're trying to plan out, and I realize if you're in your 20s and 30s and you're trying to figure out how much money I'm going to have or need when I'm in my 60s or 70s or 80s, it can be a little daunting. And at the end of the day, I just say, just keep doing it. The numbers will compound exponentially. You'd be shocked how when all of a sudden your 100,000 turns into 200,000, turns into 400,000, and those numbers start to double. All of a sudden you get in your 50s and 60s, and now you have $1 million that turns into $2 million, that turns into $4 million. It's amazing how those numbers work, but that rule just gives you a basic idea of how that works. And if you're not sure like how much money I really need to start doing all this, there are so many long-term investment calculators. You can find a spreadsheet on Excel. There are retirement calculators on lots of websites like NerdWallet or Dave Ramsey has lots of good tools like that. So you can find these to try to plan out how much money you think it's going to be, which leads me into rule number 6. When people talk about, I'm having a hard time finding money or saving money, $27.40 rule. What that means is if you literally were able to save $27.40 a day, by the end of the year, you have $10,000. And if most people started as young as possible and literally were able to invest $10,000 every year for 20 or 30 or 40 years, go look at those amortization calculators and those long-term number calculators, you'd be shocked on how much money you will have. It'll be more than you ever needed down the road. Rule number 7 we talked about before is that 50-30-20 rule. We want to stick to that budget the best we can. It's for your needs, wants, and savings. And ideally, over time, as hopefully your income starts to increase, you start to make more and more money, maybe that can become more of the, instead of 20, it could be 30 or 40, and now you're living off just the 50% for your needs and wants together. As it grows, there's times where that money, you don't need as much because you have fixed costs. And if you don't go buy a crazy big house or a super expensive car, then you can start to invest and save more. And then eventually your investments are able to then purchase things that you want to do that are a good time. Just know that that budget's very important. And rule number 8 is the 4% rule. And some people will argue about this one, but it is typically the percentage you can start to withdraw in retirement without actually touching your principal balance. So if you're withdrawing 4%, you were worth X amount of dollars, you should hopefully never have to eat your principal. So you should be able to live on that money as long as possible. The other thing about retirement, again, I'm a big proponent of real estate, is if you were to own 2, 3, 4 houses free and clear and you were collecting rent, then you're able to live on that money. And of course, those home values are going to go up over time too. You might have a little maintenance and repair. Some people argue that the 4% rule now might need to be either adjusted a little bit down or a little up. But I can promise you this, if you follow these principles and you really stick to a budget and you pay attention to what's going on with your money and finances, someday when you're thinking about not working anymore, you can keep working because you enjoy it and it's fun and you won't need the money. And I promise you, it makes dealing with money, your stress, your lifestyle so much more fun when you're not having to stress out about all these things. So if you're someone who wants to learn more about increasing and bettering your financial literacy, check out this video we did about managing your money like the 1%.